Hey guys, welcome back to the Workplace and Apprenticeship 10 videos. In this video, we're going to be looking at lesson 1 from chapter 2, which is going to be talking all about wages and salaries. So just as a quick little recap, in the example that we're going to be looking at in this video is going to be talking about overtime. So typically when you guys get overtime, you typically get overtime for working over a certain amount of hours, and usually that limit there is 40 hours per week, okay? There's also, you can get overtime, say if you work over 8 hours a day, but it really depends on what type of job you have, because there are some like nurses who work shift work who might work 12 hours in a day, but they won't get overtime. So depending on what type of job you have, may depend on the type of overtime that you get. But typically, your overtime here is often paid in terms of time and a half, which is just 1.5 times your regular wage. Okay? So the example that we're going to look at in this video is number 4 from your notes. So Marcel works for a construction company and earns $15.82 for a 37.5-hour work week. He is paid time and a half for any time that he works in excess of 37.5 hours. If he works 42.25 hours during 1 week, how much will he earn? So in this question here, we're looking for how much is Marcel going to earn? And so let's go back and highlight some of that important information there. So we know in our first sentence that Marcel makes a regular wage of $15.82 per hour, and it's for 37.5 hours, and anything over that is overtime. So looking at our next little bit of information here, he says he's paid time and a half for any time that he works in excess of 37.5 hours. So one thing that's important here is time and a half. That tells us his overtime rate. And then we also know that in the 1 week that we're going to be calculating, he worked 42.25 hours. So to calculate your total pay, it's going to be your pay at your regular hours plus your overtime hours. So this means we're going to have to do a couple of calculations before we can really get to this end goal of calculating his total money. So your first step here is we're going to calculate his regular pay. And so here we're looking at, it's going to be your wage, your hourly wage, times the number of hours that you've worked. So in this case here, Marcel is working at $15.82 per hour, and he is working 37.5 hours at his regular pay. So times 37.5 hours. Now one thing that's going to be here that is important, that's going to be a little bit different from what we've talked about, say, in chapter 1. In this example, I've set this up using what's called unit analysis. You can solve this using proportional reasoning like you did in chapter 1, but I think it's good to expose you to unit analysis. It'll help you out in some of your other classes like science. So it'd be good to kind of get used to the idea of unit analysis and solving by proportional reasoning. So when we're looking at this, just as a quick little, I guess, note about unit analysis, you always want to be canceling out some units. All in all, we're trying to get the amount of dollars he's making. So we have our dollars in, say, our first rate. So our rate is dollars per hour. Then we're going to multiply by the number of hours, because then hours divided by hours will cancel those units out. So we're only left with hours. So when we multiply our wage times the hours, so we're going to go 15.82 times 37.5 in our calculators. Then what we should get for our pay is $593.25. Okay. So our step 2 is we need to find out his overtime pay. And this one here is, I guess, a two-step part here, because first you need to know how much his overtime wage is, and to do that you just take his wage and times it by 1.5. Then we can use that answer to calculate his pay, which is very similar to what we did in our first step here by using his wage times number of hours worked. Okay, so his wage was $15.82. We're times it by 1.5. When you put that into your calculator, you should find that his rate is $23 $42.73 per hour. Then to get our next part of the question, we have his wage now. Now we need to know how many hours he got as at his overtime rate. So step number 3 is to calculate his hours at his overtime wage. So you're going to take his total hours that he worked, so it was 42.25. Then subtract the hours that he worked at regular wage, so that was 37.5. Either do that in your head or put that into your calculator. What we should get is that he would work 4.75 hours of overtime. Now that we have that, now we can use the same sort of idea that we did in step 1, where we take his wage times the number of hours that he's worked, and that would give us his overtime pay. So I'll call the step number 4 down here. So we'll take his wage, which is $23.73 per hour, and times it by the number of hours that he worked at overtime, so 4.75 hours. So if you put 23.73 times 4.75 into your calculator, what you find is that his overtime pay would be $100 or $112.72. So now we know how much he got at his regular pay, and now we know how much he got for his overtime pay. So our last step here is to find out that his overall pay. So that's equal to his regular pay, so $593.25, and add it with his overtime pay, $112.72. Do that in your head, or else you can put that into your calculator. What we should find is that Marcel's overall wage will be $705.97. And we're not quite done here, because remember, this here is a word problem. So we have to answer this with a sentence. So here we're talking about how much Marcel would earn. So we can turn that into a statement. So Marcel would earn $705.97. So as soon as you've answered that using a sentence, you guys are all ready to go. So if you guys have any questions, just make sure to come see me in class or text me on number 9101. So thank you guys so much for watching.